Awesome. And that will be sent out probably tomorrow morning. So certainly keep an eye out for that. You can go back and reference anything that is covered during today's session. Also going to be attached to that recording is a questionnaire. I'm actually going to post in the chat right now the questionnaire that we will be sending out. If you don't mind filling this out, we certainly appreciate it. I know a lot of the different ideas that we have in our office, we're certainly looking for feedback from our students and alumni. So any opportunity that we can get that feedback, we're certainly going to jump at it. So if you could just take the time, fill out that questionnaire. It should take you no more than 2 minutes to fill that out. We certainly would appreciate it, and certainly open up for that feedback. The next thing is the chat is open, so we will have a designated Q&A at the end of the session, and I would probably hold off on questions until we get to the end. If you want to take yourself off mute and ask those questions, you certainly can do so, or you can post them right into the chat. So feel free to do that. We'll read them off, and Doug will be able to answer those. So without further ado, what I would do now is pass it over to our presenter today. Doug, if the floor is yours. And then I will just say, make sure everybody is on mute. Jump on mute if you can.
Thank you, RJ, and thank you all for joining today. I'm excited to share a little bit about my journey as an entrepreneur and what's got me to where I am, which was a zigzag, bunch of randomness that kind of evolved into what quite literally is my dream job. But it was a slog to get here, and so excited to share some of the lessons learned along the way. As RJ said, looking really forward to having more of a conversation with Q&A towards the end. So talk a little bit about my my career up to this point. And I'm going to go ahead and share this. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Good, thank you. All right, so I'm a 2020 graduate of WGU, and I'll talk a little bit on how I got into that at an interesting part in my life. It was a great solution for really what we'll talk about, which is the Valley in a little bit. So just going to break this up into kind of three main acts: the launchpad, my early career in entrepreneurship and how I got into that. And then the Valley of Despair, if you guys have ever heard of that term, it's a common place that us entrepreneurs find ourselves in. The goal is to get out as quickly as possible. And then the last part, which is what I'm most passionate about and what I do in my real job today, is really nurturing and being a part of a startup ecosystem and what kind of effect that has. So going into the Launchpad, I graduated, grew up in a small farm town in Illinois, went to University of Illinois, graduated thinking I would do marketing or sales, selling $1 million tractors, basically. And right after graduated, I was given an opportunity to go sell medical equipment out of the trunk of my car. This is early 2007. And so what that turned into being was just a complete shift in the trajectory of my career, which I think a lot of you can probably relate to that. We kind of have this vision of where we think we're going to go, and it's one interesting thing is someone was asking my 7-year-old yesterday at the dentist, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I almost told her, don't ask that question, because we don't know. I don't want to put that pressure on anybody, at least I personally don't, because it's an evolution. We're on this journey called life, and lots of things come at you. So really building that resiliency and adaptability is important, which we will talk about today. So in my early career, going out and selling nebulizers out of the trunk of a car. It was a very interesting time to get into healthcare. There was a lot of regulatory things that were coming out. You now had to be a accredited entity, which was a very good thing for the industry. Unfortunately, for about 12,000 companies, overnight, when the deadline was there, they did not have their proper accreditation, and so they closed their doors. However, the startup company that I was a part of, Horizon MedCorp, we were able to get that, and that was kind of another, I would say, leap into my entrepreneurial journey. So what we took was a small, literally 2 people selling nebulizers to pediatric clinics in North Carolina, which is where I moved to, into getting into over 250 locations across the state. And with that experience and that growth, we really had wild optimism. I don't know how else to explain it, mixed with quite a bit of naivete, to where we thought we were going to totally disrupt the industry. Because we were selling a product, but what we were also doing is listening to the customer and seeing additional pain points. So then we got into remote patient monitoring early on. So with diabetic patients, we got into wound care products, which we did a tech transfer out of University of North Carolina. And then we partnered with a group of national sales reps to where now all of a sudden we were a diabetes mail order business in 21 states. And then we thought, hey, it'd be a great idea if we started our own billing company because things weren't complex enough. And then we thought, hey, there's new regulations coming out that will now hand down penalties of reimbursements for hospital systems that see readmission rates increasing. So as you could see, apologies, on MedAgenda, this was our big swing. So we were doing a lot of good, what we felt were good, intentional ways to grow in the healthcare industry. And then we thought, let's take it over. And what we thought about doing at this point in time, what we did do is we saw this trend in this utilization called SMS messaging. Text messaging was just skyrocketing. If you go back and look at the text messages sent during that time frame, it just, I mean, exponential growth in the adoption rate of what people were using that for. So we built MedAgenda, 4 years of our time and lots of other people's money. We went out to create something that had not been created before, and that was a bidirectional communication platform that we could use in healthcare so that when a patient discharged from a hospital, they didn't just leave with pieces of paper. They also left with all of their reminders preset that would text you, and it would ask for a response back, and it would aggregate all that data and then let your care plan coordinator know. So very complex system that took us 3 or 4 years to really build out. And it was wild. We had people writing code, developing the product in about 6 different countries around the world that were working on this. We found the team that did built President Obama's text messaging campaign and said, have you guys ever done anything in healthcare? And they said, nope, but we've done stuff for, I think, M&M's, Mars, one of those candy things, and Obama. And we're like, well, why not healthcare? So we partnered with them, and we really thought we were onto something. We were leveraging the regulation that was coming out. We thought we saw a solution. And one of the first lessons I want to share with you all is really acknowledge to yourself that you have blind spots, whether you know it or not. So if I were to go back at myself 20 years ago, 15 years ago, first thing I would say is don't be so arrogant. Check your ego at the door. But also, don't think that what your initial idea was, that's the ultimate solution, and then don't put your blinders on. Because looking back, I definitely think that's what I was doing. Because what we didn't acknowledge was another regulatory mandate that came out for hospital systems, and that was to adopt electronic health records. So I remember vividly, we were in front of one of the Southeast largest healthcare systems. I think at the time it was 14 or 15 hospitals throughout North and South Carolina, maybe 1 or 2 in Georgia too. And we'd already talked to the C-suite multiple times. They liked what we were offering. And we walked in there and they told us straight up, Doug, we just signed a $500 million contract. And that's not an exaggeration. It was a $500,000 contract to roll out Epic, this new electronic health record system. And with that, we walked out of the room. We're like, shoot, what we had built was something that was so small. Even though we say we could save you $17 million a year in reimbursement penalties, they weren't interested in that. They just needed to keep their head above water as they rolled out this whole new way of keeping records and caring for their patients. So we acknowledged it, we saw it, and what we didn't do is we really didn't pivot. And so that was a lot of the early days of my health tech startup career, many lessons learned, and that really led right into the Valley. So in my mid-20s, running this organization where we were in 21 states, we had multiple verticals. We were in wound care, we were in diabetes, remote patient monitoring, asthma management, and then this patient discharge platform. And in a matter of months, it all came crashing down. And it was a time where, just on a personal level, I was recently married. At the time, a 3-year-old, and ended up being on unemployment. Really was a dark time, and that's what we call that valley of despair. Like, you swing big, you take big risks as an entrepreneur, and we encourage that. However, we also encourage that you do a lot more de-risking. So don't go quite as big on so many things at the same time. Get your proof of concept, show that you can generate revenue, make sure that your cash flows are looking good, have contingency plans, a lot of those things, which I did not do. And so ended up really, a massive challenge and a pivotal moment in my career that does have a big emotional impact. Because when you're building a startup, it's also like your child. It's you're taking an idea that was born up in your head, and now you're taking actions, and you're bringing in partners, and you're hopefully conveying the vision of what you have as you build your team. And you're doing all these things, and it's time, it's money, it's commitment, it's sacrificing with your family, your friends, hobbies, different things. And then to have it all come crashing down, it's a natural thing to be hurt by that, and it's a humbling thing. And so what I like to say is, for me, and everyone handles failure differently. Everyone, we all have a different rate at which we get back up after we fall down, and that is completely fine. My personal story, it was a 3 or 4 year period where I could barely get up off my knees. Again, on unemployment. I couldn't really land a job back then. Having entrepreneur experience wasn't as enticing as I think it is now. Back then, a lot of people were looking for consistency, looking for the big names of, you worked at these large firms or these large corporations. And I had worked on a lot of small companies, some of which had never generated any dollars, and other small regional ones. And it ended up to a point where I had to find a job, and so I started washing houseboats, or boats, I should say, for $12 an hour. Did that for a whole year, and from that, it really opened my eyes on, what it means to fail, what it means to lead, learning to lead from a new lens, really getting that vision communicated a little bit better. And so slowly and surely, I got out of that position at a marina washing boats and got back into healthcare as basically an entry-level account exec for a publicly traded home care agency. and then got into working for a family that owns several long-term care facilities. So think nursing homes, assisted living and skilled facilities. And we were building out long-term care pharmacies. So it was starting to leverage what I knew to do, which was to build something from nothing with the assets and resources that we have, to leverage the existing infrastructure to build some verticals around that. And so that really reignited this passion for entrepreneurship and building new things. And what I learned along the way with that is that not everyone sees that vision in an organization. And I certainly take ownership in that. I probably wasn't painting this vision of how I thought the company could really grow and scale, leaning back into remote patient monitoring and other technologies. And it got to a point to where it wasn't a good fit for me and also my family. I wasn't happy in that role. I served two different bosses that had completely different leadership styles. And at the end of the day, I just said, I need to do something different. I was stuck. I was working for a paycheck. I wasn't working for a passion or a purpose. And with that, I really started to look at, okay, I need to get an MBA. I need to take my education level to that next level, knowing that the last time I was unemployed, I felt that it was difficult given my experience in the startup world with these smaller firms that not many people outside the region had heard of. Having an MBA surely would help. And so that's whenever really just did a deep dive. And for me, it was many, many months, probably 6 months of where I'd get real interested in it and then just kind of say, oh, I'll do that, next year. But then I'd get back into it a couple of weeks later and it just would ebb and float. And then finally, I remember even talking to my boss, one of my bosses at the time, and he said, "Sure, do it, but it better not affect any of your work here." And right then, I knew I have to get out of here. There wasn't any straight up encouragement or let us know how we can help. We want you to continue in your career, and so that was the fuel that I needed. Actually, in hindsight, you know what, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to crush it at work. And so I dove in. WGU is what I went with. It was perfect for my life at that point in time. I had 12 or 13 years building startups. All of them, all but one, was really in the healthcare field. Led large companies, worked for publicly traded companies, way down on the ladder. But still, I thought, you know what, if I could do this and use my experiences and my knowledge of what I've learned through kind of the MBA of, Hard Knocks MBA, being in that space for over a decade, and it worked out perfect. I learned a lot. I built a lot of confidence in myself, realizing, wow, I actually learned a lot of what other MBAs, they spend multiple years in school to get this stuff. And I've already done that with 4 different companies, those sorts of things. And so I was able to get through the program, and quite literally, so leading up to whenever I knew I was going to graduate, which was in March of 2020, and there was a lot going on in the world then, was that I'd been applying for jobs. And whenever I had finally graduated with my MBA in healthcare management, within 2 months, I had landed a job back with a startup doing remote patient monitoring based out of just outside of Detroit, Michigan. And we could move anywhere. So my wife and young child, again, 2020, we were able to move back where I grew up in central Illinois to be close to family, worked remotely, and it doubled my salary at the time. So this was a massive, not only a boost from a confidence level of, hey, I actually know this stuff that people with titles and positions that used to be intimidating to me, they're no different than me. As a matter of fact, I feel that given all these bumps and bruises I felt along the way, I possibly could be stronger in business than they are, and that's fine. And so something to just reflect on is that sometimes the path forwards looks nothing like what you imagined, but that doesn't mean it's not the wrong path. And just remember, you're not starting over, you're starting from experience. And so everybody, we're going through different types of journey, and the conversation today and this week with WGU is entrepreneurship, and that is a journey. You might get in the entrepreneurial world at because you're a high school student and you're really into coding and developing and you want to build, and that's great. And you could also be a 65-year-old retiree that's finally taking that leap into entrepreneurship. So you're not starting over by taking on this new role or going down this new path. You're starting from experience. So I urge you all to remember that. And then the ecosystem effect. So this is, again, what I'm super passionate about in my day job right now. I run an innovation hub in Central Illinois out of Peoria, Illinois. We are a 30,000 square foot facility, which I'll show you some pictures in a little bit. But the magic of it all is that it's the community that's the secret weapon of entrepreneurship. I spent years, probably closer to a decade, of just doing it within my small circle around me, not leaning into and leveraging other entities that exist. So this is the building I'm standing in right now. What's interesting is as we speak, right down below me, we have the Soybean Association that's having panel discussions to talk about some very big things. So here in Illinois, we grow a lot of soy, and we export a lot of soy. And so within an ecosystem, it's fun to create these events where people collide and come together. So we have venture capitalists downstairs. We have researchers from academic institutions across the state. We have the National Ag Utilization Lab. So brilliant scientists working on things, academic institutions. We have startup founders down there. And that's what the ecosystem is, right? It's all these different people coming together to talk about a problem, identify a problem, but then also talk through some potential solutions. So communities and pillars, those are super important. And it was great to see when RJ asked where are we calling in from. You guys are from all over the place, and I don't know every single location that you're coming from, and so I can't just make a blanket statement. But I would imagine that a majority of where you all are within 30 to 60 minute drive, or maybe 30 to 60 miles, you have resources that are meant for entrepreneurs. I show this slide here locally. It doesn't probably mean a lot to anybody that's outside of this space, but this was something that was created years ago. And as a startup founder, I look at this and I'm like, whoa, this is way too complex. That's just a logo soup there. How do I know where to go? And that's what an ecosystem also is, though. It's a complex and adaptive thing that always evolves. There's a good book called Startup Community, I think by Brad Feld. Great book on building out these startup ecosystems. Goes into the history of Silicon Valley and the Trader SA and some really cool stuff. But looking at this logo soup here, if you're a startup founder, how do you know where to go? They tried to map this out, and it's a good attempt. But to me, what that does is says, there's a lot of resources here that exist, and that's great. We need to improve the navigation. And so what we're doing here is trying to evolve the ecosystem into making it a porous ecosystem. One thing that we've done is every public university here in Illinois, for those of you that are in Illinois or want to ever do business here, there's something called the Illinois Innovation Network. 15 hubs throughout the state. 14 of those hubs are on university campus. So every public university in the state. Here at Distillery Labs, we are the odd duck out. So we are the only non-academic as far as location, as far as being led by university staff. We're the complete opposite. So we are we're founder-led, founder-focused, and yeah, we get to tap into those resources of all the wonderful things going on in that academic world. And we're going to wrap this up here in about 5 minutes, and then open it up. I want to get a lot of time for Q&A. But the belief here at Distillery Labs is that an ecosystem that's simple to navigate with solid development pillars and porous silos, meaning that if you're a founder, you should be able to go to one of these entities and then very freely move on to the next one. It shouldn't, you shouldn't get stuck into one support organization, which tends to happen, and then not know where to go because they don't have a resource, and they're like, well, now I'm back to square one. I need to find a new navigator to navigate the ecosystem. So here's a little bit more about the facility itself. What we've built out is a 30,000 square foot facility with co-working space, maker space, so think 3D printers, CNC machines, sewing machines, etc. We also have a really high-end commercial kitchen, podcast studio, photography studio. But as it pertains to the ecosystem, what we've done is we've not just built a facility where when we're at capacity, we'll have about 80 different startups working out of here. Currently, we have startups that the full end, both ends of the spectrum. So we have your princess party event planning company that connects actors and actresses with events. So say your daughter or son wants Elsa at your birthday party, they can hook you up. To the very other end on the tech side, we have startup companies that are leveraging AI-enabled advanced prosthetics. We have another company that is transferring tech out of the military, so small modular nuclear reactors to power up cities, go into disaster response. And that's a 2-star general that's working on that right out of this building. And so this ecosystem is working on a lot of different things, but what we've also done is we've thrown in, we have the Women's Business Development Center that's in here. We have the Hispanic Chamber, the Black Chamber, for us, our local Peoria Chamber of Commerce. We have a venture capital firm in here. We have angel investors in here. We actually have a hip hop radio station that broadcasts out of here. We have a Spanish speaking radio station that just launched out of here a couple weeks ago. And then to top it all off, we threw a coffee shop in the front that anybody in the community can walk into. So what we really encourage other people to do is to just walk in, just show up. And that's some advice I'd like to share with you guys is, yes, entrepreneurship is hard. Yes, there's no guarantees at all. But an idea that stays in your head is not worth any sort of value to anybody, including yourself. So I encourage you to just challenge yourself to take the first step, which in my opinion, the first step is taking an idea that's in your head and going to talk to somebody about it. What we see a lot of times in supporting startup founders is that they do have this level of fear, and it ties back to really the fear of failure. We think that, you know, they're going to have an idea and it's going to fail and everyone's going to think they're a failure. And for us here in Central Illinois, we've kind of flipped the script, and we actually every month we have something called Fail Club where we celebrate failure and we talk about it because we want to shift the mindset here in Central Illinois so that if the thesis is that if we could dial down the fear of failure just 1 or 2% every couple of years, that in 20 years, the next generation of founders will grow up in an ecosystem where they'll have a better way to manage, to identify risk, to manage risk, to predict some contingency plans so that more people will take that first step. So just to close this all up, some things to take away when you're looking to find your ecosystem, look local. You know, there's community colleges, innovation hubs, co-working space. Find an employer that has innovation. So we have here locally, Caterpillar was at one point in time based here, but their tech center is still here, where $2 billion a year in R&D happens about 20 minutes from where I'm standing. We also have one of the country's most innovative healthcare systems, that big white building across the street that you could see. So lean into innovative companies that might be in your space. Also, depending on where you are, what are your region's strengths? Is it aerospace? Is it logistics, supply chain? Is it agriculture? Is it healthcare? What is it that your area, whether it's your immediate area or maybe your state or your part of the country, what are you known for? Is there an innovation arm within that industry that you could tap into? There are small business development centers, SBDCs, across the country. I know in Illinois, I believe we have 37 throughout the state. I'm assuming there's a few dozen in every other state, but I don't know that. But look up some areas or some resources that are local. And then really finding your core people around you. Find a coach, find a mentor, find a peer, whatever it is. I wouldn't recommend finding a lot of people. Like we joke, but it's not so much a joke. We're like, yeah, your mom could be your first customer, but don't build a business around her opinion, because she's going to love it. And that's somewhat hyperbole, but that's something that you really got to keep in mind as you're building out your startup, if that's what you want to do. So don't just get a bunch of yes people that are going to agree with everything you say. You need to find people that have areas of expertise that are different from yours, that have a different perspective of yours. Really get to know yourself and your strengths and weaknesses, and then actively go out and try to find people that can fill the gaps and the blind spots that you have. And another thing that really encourage everybody to do, and this is what we're trying to really put a spotlight on here as far as a culture, is we call it give first, give back. So really it's a give before you take. So you might be a startup, you're not generating any revenue, you may not have a lot of treasure or even talent to help your peers, your other founders, your other entrepreneurs, but we encourage you to really take time to sit down. We have days here where somebody just found out they're going to be in a pitch competition tomorrow, and we'll just kind of send out on Slack, hey, anybody sit in for a pitch review, and then if we have the time, we'll go do that. And it's that give first mentality that we feel really makes a strong ecosystem. And again, that's in my current role as executive director at Distillery Labs, is to help nurture and support the ecosystem as a whole, while also supporting individual founders and connecting them with the resources with a long-term 20 to 25-year view of becoming one of the world's top 25 startup communities. So just remember that you don't need to have all the answers. Back to the beginning of my conversation, being in my early to mid-20s, thinking that I was going to completely disrupt healthcare, save millions of lives. In theory, that's what I was marching towards. But now that I'm through distance and time and experience, realized that I just had blinders on and I wasn't seeing the full playing field at all. And had I went to the right person, asked the right questions, got the right mentorship, I think that things certainly would have turned out differently. Although where I am now, I'm glad they turned out exactly the way they did, because it's one of those things where now being part of this ecosystem here in Peoria, everything that happened up to this point completely makes sense. It's like, so all those hard times, going through that valley of despair, now, on the other side, it's easy to look back with hindsight and say, okay, those things now make sense. And now hopefully in my role, I can give back to the next generation to create some shortcuts and hopefully reduce some friction and avoid some headaches that the next generation can have. So thank you. Hopefully there's enough time for lots of questions. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Plenty of time for questions. And Doug, thank you for sharing your story and those insights. I think anybody listening can take something away from you, just like I said, sharing your story and talking about that valley of despair and things that you learned over the course of that has led you to where you are right now. And I think, it's a testament to you for being able to kind of persevere through that. But also I think it's great for others to kind of hear that and hear, they might be going through a similar type of situation and, being able to persevere through that on their own and, seek out some of those resources that you mentioned, seeking out a mentor to kind of help them through that process, I think is fantastic. For those that would love to ask Doug questions, you could either post those into the chat, or if you want to, you can raise your hand. I will call on you, and you can come off mute and ask those questions. Just a reminder, session is being recorded, and that will be sent out tomorrow morning. Also, questionnaire attached to that. I'm going to repost that into the chat now. So if you could just take the time to fill that out, but we'll open it up for questions in the audience. If anybody has anything, and we do have one question that came in. How did you discover your startup ideas?
I love this question, and I love being on the other side now too. One of my favorite things in the world is whenever someone comes into Distillery Labs and says, I have an idea, like first, okay, great, tell me about it. And then my follow-up question I love asking is, where did you come up with that idea? And it almost always comes back to a personal story where there's some sort of pain involved. So, you know, it's, and there's a wide range of what that could mean. So remote patient monitoring, one of the things I was working on was I was pretty far, 800-ish miles away from where the rest of my family was building these startups. And while I was down there, my grandma, she fell. And it took her 8 hours to crawl to a phone. She broke her hip. And then ultimately, you know, there was, because nobody knew it, she couldn't get to the phone. She survived that, but then after surgeries, she didn't make it through that. So a very personal story of, if you're in your home and you have, you know, there's the, now I forget it, but it's the help I follow and I can't get up the button. Like, she didn't have that at the time because we didn't know if she had, was at fall risk. So it's finding a pain point and realizing, you know what, there's a better way to do this. We could leverage technology in the home that could connect outside of the home. So it could connect with a loved one or connect with a caregiver. So those are some of the things. And what me personally, what I've tried to do over time, and now I kind of try to do it with the next generation of founders that I mentor, is to create this alarm that goes off in your head, a good kind of alarm, that when you hear anybody around you, and it could be people you know, your coworkers, your family, you could be sitting in a restaurant that's 2 tables away, but when you hear someone say, gosh, that's frustrating, that's annoying, when fill in the blank, there's got to be a better way to do this. How come no one's invented this, a better solution? Like, when you hear those things, it should trigger something in your head to really say, good question. Why isn't there a better way to do this? What's really keeping people from coming up? And then usually it's, well, we've always done it this way, and so everyone just kind of go with the status quo. But over time, and that's not how I was early in my career, it was just seeing opportunities that really tied back to personal stories on technology. There has to be a better way to do it. So then we dove into that. But right now, and being in an entrepreneurial ecosystem like this is, there is no exaggeration. Every single day that I'm in this building, I'm talking with somebody that there's a spark and an idea goes off. And it's, I mean, and they're not my ideas, it's the people I'm talking with. And like, you know what? What if we did this? And sometimes, you know, true innovation is not inventing something that has never existed before. True innovation, and the massive ones that could scale, are where you take 2 existing things that you really never thought would be a good fit. But if you figure out how to fit them together and what the market strategy is and all those fun things, that could be massive innovation.
Next question that came in, what do you think is the biggest difference between entrepreneurs who stick with it and find success versus those who step away from the journey?
Oh, man. If there was a quick and easy answer to that, I think we'd all be billionaires. You know, and it's a great question, and quite, I don't know. You know, over time, there are some red flags. So when we engage with a startup founder, we listen, they talk, and sometimes they've never built a company. They don't know how to start one. They don't know how to lead a vision and get people on board. There's certain skills that you can teach, And then some I don't think you really can, at least not in the near term. It's not like, oh, well, go through this program and in 7 weeks you'll be resilient. Yay. So what we really see is we try to look out for those red flags. And I'll give you an example. There's a startup founder that we're working with now where I have had 5 or 6 meetings that are exactly the same. Like, she comes back, she talks about her vision, we tell her the resources she has, here's what the next steps would be. Now you go do it. We're not here to do things for you. We're here to help guide you to get to the next step. And then she'll come back a month later, and there's been no progress, no traction. And I don't know how I really label that quality within her character. Probably tying back to fear. It's taking that first step. The ones that really, and it's a lot like hiring. If you've hired a lot of people, you look for someone that's coachable. If they're not willing to listen to other people's opinions, that's a major red flag. If they think they know it all, which was a 25-year-old Doug, that was me, they're not going to succeed. So really, that might be perhaps one of the strongest indicators that they might find success. And what we realize is it may not be the thing they're working on then and there. It might be version 3.0, or it might be something completely different. But those that will listen, that are coachable, that will actively take that next step, when they get knocked down or they hit a roadblock, they either power through or take a step back and reassess the situation and either pivot or abandon it. Another feeling that I have is that quitting can be a superpower if you know how and when to do that. It's another one of those terms, just like failure, like shouldn't be such a negative thing. Quitters don't have to be losers. Quitters quite literally can be the winners sometimes. Slack is a good example of that, actually. He quit on building this game and then pivoted into an internal platform they were using to build the game system. And then Slack was born. All right, what other questions do we have?
Yeah, next one. Does Distillery Labs have any content that we could tap into, podcasts, newsletters, etc.?
Yes, keep an eye out for that. So we've been open only 8 months. We've been around for 4 years, really operating an accelerator program twice a year. We partnered with Generator, which is an international venture capital firm. They run our 7-week accelerator program, so really meant for the highly scalable companies that eventually would be looking for venture capital. So that's been who we are really for 3.5, 4 years. Just opening up our doors 8 months ago. In the next couple of months, there'll be a lot of content. Like the conversation that's going downstairs right now is a 2-day symposium on soybean and soy innovation and ag tech. That'll get put up there. We're building out health tech tracks, health tech accelerators. So Thomas, to answer your question is stay tuned. All right. See, what's one thing you consider a must do or have to make the transition between employment to entrepreneurship smoother? So that's another great question. Sometimes there needs to be a reality check, right? I will advise my children when they get a little bit older, if you're going to do a startup, do it before you have a family. It's just easier, right? It's less mouths to feed, less bills, like all those things. It's easier, but also you don't have all this institutional knowledge and experience that's up in your head. And on that note, I would say transition between employment to entrepreneurship is be as realistic with yourself as possible. Get your finances in order. It's okay to jump off a cliff and build the plane on the way down, but only if you're pretty sure you have all the parts to build the plane. If you only have one wing, then I would say do not jump off of that cliff yet. Go find a wing, go build a wing, and then jump. So think about it like, okay, worst case scenario, if I'm doing a chosen transition, meaning I'm not forced, meaning I didn't lose my job, I have a job. Try to make it a many months long process. You build up a little bit of savings, try to figure out what your costs are going to be, just to build your MVP. You could do a lot of things to get traction, get customer feedback, and building your startup without quitting your day job. And that's just a very individualized piece of advice that I can't just give a blanket statement of, work 2 months on your project, and if it's 80% complete, quit your job and everything's going to be fine. I just advise you to be thoughtful, intentional, have your worst case scenario in mind, and then figure out, what is your risk tolerance? What if you had zero income for 3 months? Again, on the flip side of that, if you've lost your job and you currently don't have a job, what eventually I got back to is, well, I'm not doing anything else, so let me figure out what I can do. And so at that point in time, I was volunteering as a mentor for startups, not having a job, and that was kind of a fun thing. It was something I enjoyed doing. I was giving back, and that led to some other things. Okay.
I can read off the next one. As a person who thinks he has a million great ideas, my question would relate to development. How do you go from finding companies that can make a prototype idea and bring it to a physical product?
Yes. So if you have a university in your area, if you have an innovation hub in your area, usually, but not always, they have maker spaces. So depending on what your product is, like in this building, we have 3D printers, and it is another word for makerspace is really prototype lab. We don't mass produce anything out of here. It is creating that MVP, minimally viable product, or a prototype. So someone comes in and says, I want to build the thing, but I don't know what to do. I've heard about 3D printers. What do I do? Well, then for us, we connect them with the technology, so the 3D printer. We connect them with someone that can teach them how to use it, and then they can start to work with them. And on the university side, at least here in the universities that we're engaged with, they have programs. They want their students to get experiential learning. So we've worked with a few different startups to connect them with business students and or engineering students to work on a project to build a prototype over 6 months. And sometimes that costs a little bit of money. I'd say about half the time, but then another time it's these kids, it's a requirement. They have to have it. And so if there's not a plethora of ideas that these students could work on, then they could just take up your idea and say, I'd love to 3D print a better, walking stick or something. Then, okay, then let's figure out how to do it. What material do we use? What's the composite structure? What's the shape? Is it ergonomic? And let's build it and then test it with some people. And then at probably a more expensive would be some fabrication labs, like where you would probably have to pay them thousands of dollars for them to figure out how to make your product. There's hopefully, Jason, I'm not sure where you reside, but hopefully there's something fairly close. But academic institutions, innovation hubs, also look on Reddit. I don't know how engaged other ecosystems are. I'm not really plugged into any of those, but here locally, there's like within Reddit, like Peoria makers or Peoria startups, and just throw it out there. Hey, I have this idea. It's, I would, to the best of your ability, without revealing too much, it's in this general area. Anybody have interest in grabbing a cup of coffee, and I think you might be able to help me build a prototype. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You'd be surprised.
And speaking to that point, Doug, I'd encourage people, you jumped into this session today to, gain some great insight from somebody that's lived it. Feel free to network with each other too. Here's an opportunity where, people join this session for a reason. Like, feel free, post in the chat, like your LinkedIn. Doug, I would ask, what is the best way if people, are interested in connecting with you? What might be the best way to get in touch and potentially have a conversation about, some things maybe that their ideas that they might have, or just feedback, and just to get your professional insight?
Absolutely. I'll drop my email in here, and I've learned to be upfront about this. My wife and my mom would agree. I am not the best communicator. If there's not a response right away, do not take it personally. I own it. That's me. But I'm going to drop my email in here. Distillery.org. And then also connect on LinkedIn. That's a good way to kind of see what's going on at Distillery Labs too. We have a lot of big things coming up. International pitch competition coming up on the 29th, which is a State Department thing where diplomats from all over the world are coming down to Peoria. A lot of things we're rolling out, and we do our best to help support everybody. We happen to be based downtown Peoria, but we partner with innovation hubs in Brazil, in India, in Germany. We're happy to connect. So feel free to shoot me an email. Also, don't be afraid to shoot me a follow-up if I don't respond in a few days or weeks. Just know that it's not you, it's me. It's one of those things. But then also LinkedIn. Love to connect with you guys. See if we can help you. Good question. Let me pull my LinkedIn link real quick.
And I would just chime in and say, definitely utilize LinkedIn. As we were going about trying to identify some different alumni from WGU, that's how I found Doug. So that's one thing I would encourage you, utilize the resources that you have available. And I think that's something that not enough people are doing. It makes sure you're leaning into not only just your whatever industry you might be looking to tap into, but this alumni network that we have here at WGU is vast. And you went to you might be going to WGU right now, or maybe you are an alum, and you didn't come here just for the degree. Like, you came here to be able to tap into the other resources that we have here, and one of those things is the alumni network. So, and Doug, I appreciate you sharing the LinkedIn and sharing your email to connect with different people. Anybody else have questions for Doug? I'll give people a second. And just a reminder, sessions recorded will be sent out tomorrow. And that questionnaire was posted into the chat. We certainly would appreciate your feedback. Ron had a question. Ron, if you'd like, take yourself off mute and ask away.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say thank you. I've gone through a lot of what you've been talking about. But secondly, you talked about venture capitalists, you talked about angel investors. How do you approach them, find the right one, and that fits what you're really trying to do, rather than against some roadblocks there?
Yeah, gosh, they say, so if you're going after investment, it's a marriage. If you're going for an angel investor, typically they're looking for a 3 to 7x return within 5 to 7 years, if not sooner. So for 5 to 7 years, that's someone else that you report to. They're on your cap table. They own a portion of your vision. So there are different angel networks and syndicates throughout the country. Here locally, we have a few that Central Illinois Angels, which in about an hour, I'm going to their annual review meeting. So part of creating this porous ecosystem is I also help with their deal flow and things like that. So just a Google search online, like local angel investment groups. So depending on what you're going after, typically speaking, consider bootstrapping or grants to get your MVP. Again, this is not the prescription for everyone, because there's individualized medicine here with entrepreneurship, is that bootstrap if you can, and if you want to. Get grants so it doesn't dilute your ownership. So you could still maintain whatever ownership you currently have without giving up equity or getting money in. Then ask for friends and family, which they say friends, family, and fools, that you can also really think through that, because within that there's different options. It could be a loan. Hey, I just need $5,000 or $20,000 or $1,000 to get me through the next 6 months. Would you consider giving it to me with no expectation of ever getting it back? Would you consider it a loan, and current rates are at whatever, 2%, whatever it is, that I'll pay it back within 12 months, and then it starts out interest only. Like, you could, in theory, you could structure it whatever way you want, but then you go into angel investors. And for here locally, it's anywhere between $25,000 to $250,000. Those are the checks they'll write. But each investment group and even an angel investor should have an investment thesis. So they want to invest in hyper local within a 50-mile range. They want to invest in women-owned businesses only. They want to invest in ag tech only, or health tech, or SaaS platforms. So just do your research, just deep dive into it to try to find that. And then if you're highly scalable, typically speaking, venture capital, that's where you're going to ask for $1 million+. And that's one man's opinion. I'm not an expert in anything, but that's kind of what we see around here. So take that for what it's worth, Ron.
Well, thank you.
And we have time for one more question, and it just came in through the chat. Can you recommend a book or any other type of resource that gives you an overview of what one has to do when starting a company?
So I love books, books on tape. Real quick, heard a stat one time that if you drive over 25,000 miles a year, which one of those jobs, whenever I was really in that valley of despair, was a lot of driving. It's like 700 miles a week all over North Carolina, that you're spending more time in the car than a full-time college student spends in the classroom. So if you're in the car, get books on tape. Yes, music is good, but you could actually, I would do 45 books a year. So that, in conjunction with the MBA at WGU, really helped shoot my knowledge and experience up. So there's a lot. There's the Lean Startup. That's a good one. I'm big on leadership and history as well. And so, like, looking around here, so Becoming Bulletproof is a good one. Learning from others, like podcasts are a good way to go too. But the story of Nike, the story of Starbucks, Onward, I think, is that one. Nike's Shoe Dog. I don't know. Maybe I need to just create a list of all the books, because this question does come up a lot, and it's a great question. And I always there's so many I can't decide. So sorry, Scott, I really didn't answer your question very well. But connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll think through. I'll try to create a document and then try to get that sent out.
Awesome. And I want to be respectful of your time, Doug. We certainly appreciate you jumping in and providing, insights, sharing your story. If people did have questions that they were looking to get answered, Scott provided his contact information. Certainly reach out to him and connect. But Scott, I really appreciate you, Doug, sorry. Oh my goodness, it's a long day.
No worries.
Doug, I appreciate you jumping in today and answering questions and providing feedback. We certainly appreciate it.
Truly my pleasure. I did the parting words that encourage you to take the next step, whatever that is for you. Maybe it's the first step, because if you don't, then you know what's going to happen, and that's you're going to be, you're not going to get any closer to your vision or your goal. And sometimes that first or next step is literally having a conversation with someone outside of your family, right? Just, hey, I have this idea or whatever. Just start to build momentum. You don't have to have giant leaps. Baby steps help. So, and as RJ said, lean into this alumni network. it'd be interesting to know the stats on who's on this call. I'm imagining a lot of people should be doing work at their office, but they're logged into this. That they're fully employed, but they're curious about entrepreneurship. And to you all, just, I support you. I'm here. If I can make any connections to help you, I'm happy to do that. And I truly mean that.
Awesome. Doug, again, thank you so much. We certainly appreciate it. You jumping back in, connecting with us here at WGU. And then for everybody else that took the time to jump into the session today, we appreciate it and certainly looking for your feedback. All right, everyone, have a fantastic rest of the day. Take care.
Thanks.